All right, hello there, traders. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Here we are, TOGS Trading Podcast number 36. Right, what we want to talk about today is all about how you make 2025 your best trading year so far. So by the end of the session, what we want to be able to do is to have you be able to sort of address some sort of trading plan for the new year, about what you're going to do, how you're going to go about it, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the sort of ideas that we can share with you about what we're doing ourselves, that hopefully will help resonate with you, and you can sort of take it away and help you make 2025 the best trading year so far. So, of course, as always, I'm joined by a big Ian in Dublin there. Looking good, Billy Ray. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you very much altogether. Looking forward to the new year, or as the
Good
year
man.
will be in the new year. All prepared for a better new year. Even bought myself a new pen. So
Ooh, look at you, living the
yeah,
dream, right? Living the dream. So, did you have yourself a good break? I mean, we've been away for about a month, haven't we? Really, from the
yeah,
podcast, but also in terms of thing. How's your festive period been?
it was okay. It was busy enough actually. There was an awful lot of people coming and going, and we had a lot of dinner parties. My father was here for Christmas, so it was quite busy. So in some ways, it was. I would not call it particularly relaxing, really, this Christmas. I think we were talking about just going away someplace next Christmas, go to a hotel someplace, or go to someplace sunny and sit on the beach. Might be nicer. Don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I spent Christmas at home, but then into New Year we went away to the Lake District, which we've got into
right.
like a few days away. It's almost like kind of it's after New Year, so done. You get a few days before back to work, school. It's kind of nice to have a few days break, and the Lake District
Mm,
is
mm.
relatively quiet and stuff. It's good, a little bit of time, but even during that time, I started to get my head back in the game, started to make a few notes and ideas about the way I want to conduct myself this year, what I want to achieve, also based on my kind of review of last year and stuff, and how I want to improve, or constantly a desire to improve and get better. I don't think that ever leaves you. I think that's just part of being in a performance game. So,
Mm.
how about yourself, Ian? All right, what are you going to do this year to make 2025 your best trading year? What are you thinking about?
Well, it's already started off quite strong actually, because I was thinking an awful lot about how to improve trading generally over the last little while. I was thinking about a lot of life changes and stuff like that in general. I was quite frustrated in some ways with trading, with just the lifestyle of it, all that sort of stuff. And then I was realized that the first thing you really have to do is you have to make a decision to change, and that's the first part of it. But everybody says they can make a decision to change, but it's actually really making a decision that you've really internally committed to. And then once you do that, it's relatively straightforward, because your subconscious will stop acting up against you. And then so you've only two types of decisions, really. I always think particularly in this type of thing, which is that sort of fundamental decision. I want to do this, and then you just have process decisions afterwards. And once you've made the real decision to do something, and you really believe in it and you're really committed to it, the process decisions are relatively simple, because you can see, because it's almost like a roadmap, because you know where you're going. You have a goal, you have an image of yourself in the future, and I think that those things are very important. And then I was thinking a lot about the what things that were holding me back, because one of the things with it's like being a doctor in some ways. There's a lot of doctors out there who just basically pass their medical exam, and they only kill one or two people a year. So, nobody really notices and nobody really complains. But it's just basically covering over. They're still professional doctors, but they still have problems in their practice, and how they're doing their actual doctoring thing of it. And I think it's the same thing with traders. I think there's always you can be a professional trader, but your skill will mask some of the issues that you actually have, basically. So I made a big decision this year, which I really sort of committed to properly, to look at myself, to change with myself, and to basically deal with what holds you back. Because there's only fundamentally there's only two problems in trading. You either don't know what to do, or you're afraid to do it. And that's what the problem is, I think, for an awful lot of traders. I had residual fear, and I know I had residual fear. And I was doing a couple of things. That I was trading sometimes for excitement, because I was bored. I mean, trading is boring.
Yeah.
Good trading is exceptionally boring. And I was sometimes trading for excitement, but I was doing an awful lot of stuff I was trading an emotion. I was trading the emotion of fear sometimes when I should be trading. I wasn't trading for cash. I was trading to be comfortable. But then your skill level is high enough that you're able to get some of the cash and be
Yeah.
comfortable. So then I made a big decision to try and trade with no fear. Just do it. Just do the stuff that you're supposed to do and do it absolutely properly. Wait for the best trades, sit there, be bored. Because being boring is a pain. There's a pain that causes your system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
Very
found
true.
it fundamentally very quickly affected my trading in a hugely positive way, where it just became less stress and a little bit basically to make more money. That's the simplest explanation for it. And very suddenly started making much more money. So I was really quite delighted with myself at the moment. So I was.
Well, there's a fair amount going on there, isn't there? There's a lot
Mm.
to it, a lot to unpack there. The right that you're sharing with us all and stuff. That's all well and good. You mentioned there and stuff. Okay, in terms of part of it is getting comfortable with not only uncertainty but getting comfortable with being bored, especially if you're an intraday trader. Especially if you're an intraday trader, being comfortable with being bored is harder than many think because you're constantly surrounded by devices that can stimulate you and give you a little bit of a dopamine shot, or and in fact, if anything, that could be the worst thing for you as a trader. Being able to sit and wait, okay, is a and having that patience is a real skill, is a real skill, and it's one of the reasons that I suggest to new traders is that actually trading something like the daily charts to begin with, or even the weekly charts, is not a bad place to start. And the reason being that you can just effectively you can ring fence a period, 45 minutes in your morning, all right, or at the end of the day, come and once the new candle is completed or the new candle is just starting, and have a position to just basically get in, do your analysis, put your trade on, and close your position down, and you're not having to sit and wait there all morning for your trade to set up, because invariably for most people, being able to sit there in patience and wait for the setup, that's when they start playing tricks. The mind starts playing tricks, and then you start seeing patterns that aren't there, or you get bored. You start just think, you start to trade what you feel, okay, rather than what you're seeing on the markets and stuff and what have you. It can be a proper minefield for some traders in terms of how they look to operate on that. Um,
Mm.
what I'd add to that in terms of my own thing is that those who'll know me know I always look at everything through the prism of the four M's of trading, right? Markets, method, money, and myself. Those are the four M's, okay? Those are the kind of four pillars, however you wish to label it or describe it. But I always have to address those four M's because I know myself, and I know in clients that when those four M's are all in alignment, that is when we have the opportunity to generate good outcomes, good returns as a trader. When you're not managing those four M's, that's when you start to have challenges and struggles, etc. So, we'll have a little chat about them in terms of what you need to understand and how I would view it, and I'll kind of pop a few questions up that people listening to this can take away and start to answer to help them make their own kind of a good plan for this year. What else would you add in? What else is kind of
Well,
keeping you awake? Plans
first
for
thing I would
2020.
agree. First thing I would agree with is that when you are starting off and trading beneath a daily chart it's too quick. It's too quick, and you need to learn in a slower environment. And you can learn. It's all the same stuff. The stuff that happens on a daily chart happens on a 60-minute chart, happens on a 5-minute chart. It's all the same kind of stuff. Um, One of the things that I noticed with it a lot, what you were saying there as well, is that failure tends to be a habit. It's a habit that you pick up in trading. It's like some people, like I have a habit of not holding my trades for long enough, which I'm happily working on at the moment. And it's a process. So you can see it in yourself. You make a decision. So you start off and you buy because I have no problem entering a trade. I have no problem stopping myself out of a trade. But when that trade goes up a significant amount, but might not yet be at the target, I'm kind of going, I'll take the money and I'll run. And a lot of that is that there's usually a feeling. So you start off with the first feeling, which might be a slight bit of nervousness in case you end up having, because you were traumatized from the past because you've lost money before in the past, and you're always going to carry that someplace in you, that memory of losing money. Then you get a little bit more anxious, then you get a little bit more anxious, and then you hit the sort of top bit as you go around in your circle. You hit the 12 o'clock bit, and then you take an action which is against your own self good, which is in this case getting rid of your trade. And then it goes, then you calm down, and then you feel happy for a second, and then it goes down to guilt, and then you're back at the start of the process again for the next trade. And that's a habit.
Yeah.
That's a simple habit. So the thing with that is that you have to identify the habits which are causing you to fail, basically, because you're acting 90% of your problems are probably the same problem, just dressed up in different ways. So you have to find the problem and then learn to interrupt it in the middle. So you know that you feel when I'm in a trade, I feel this. And as soon as I feel this, I know I have to interrupt that feeling and move on with that. And then people talk about self-discipline. Yes, at the beginning of that process, you have to use a certain amount of self-discipline and you have to use a certain amount of self-forgiveness because you won't get it right the first 50 times.
Yeah.
But the thing with self-discipline is the thing that you use. Self-discipline is should be a short-term process. So what self-discipline does is it helps you create new habits, and then the habits should take over so you're not using self-discipline. And that's how I would see with that. So I know for myself that that's the process that I would use for changing my own type of trading is to just notice if all these feelings live in your body someplace as well. You can learn to feel where you
Yeah.
know some people get fear in the pit of their stomach, some people get a headache, whatever it is, but you will notice that there'll be some part of your body that will react
Yeah. Sort
to
of setting things back, when there was an opportunity. I have what would you call it? Would you call it muscle memory? My right thumb, the kind of side my thumb I start when I intraday trade. Basically, I'd start tapping it on the desk and stuff. But there's reasons for all that. But yeah, there are ways that these things manifest themselves and stuff. It's yeah, interestingly, this is well, it's a dog leg, but it's the same thing. I was reading a piece at the weekend about Premier League footballers and such, and the performance coaches that work with them, and actually how we think that Premier League footballers have this like kind of wonderful life, etc. And it's all relative, isn't it? It's all depending upon your perspective. But they were saying that they actually have to spend most of the time with the young Premier League footballers, actually embedding in them that actually most of their career will be hard work and a series of lows, a series of losses, losing a training session, losing a game, losing a competition, etc. And actually, most of their career is a series of lows. With the odd occasional high, and it is the feeling of that occasional high that actually makes up for for what is actually the day is actually hard work, mundane, quite boring, getting on with it. And that actually kind of struck me in the sense of that it's not massively dissimilar. That's not massively dissimilar to trading in many ways. That actually it is days of actually hard work, mundane, a bit boring, with the occasional highlight, whether it be a very good trade or a good P&L, etc., or even just it doesn't even have to be a good P&L, just a good trade that you traded really, really well and stuff. And there's actually there was a much more similarities between the two performance professions than I realized. But part of it is, as you say, about managing your expectations about what you're capable of and what is feasible, so you don't get the kind of the sort of cognitive dissonance that comes from basically the divergence between what you think your trading is going to be like and actually how it turns up, because in that gap is where all manner of pain comes, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true because there's a point as well with trading where you just look at it and you go, Jesus, am I going to be doing this for the next 10 years? And I found that even in the last few weeks, I was sitting down, I was looking at it, and I was going 10 more years of this before I can retire. It's really quite a thing, I always think. And it's boring even with success. And one of the things I found that works with that quite well is to find a competitor.
Yeah.
If you find some other trader that you don't like and compete with them, it's actually quite good because you get a
yeah.
When trading stops giving you the emotional highs and lows, because it will eventually stop giving you the highs and lows, but beating somebody else is quite fulfilling in its own way, So that's what I find. Like, I mean, I got a snotty comment from somebody yesterday when I was trading another professional trader, and I was like, well, no. Now I'm going to settle down and I am going to win this. Sat down, pulled out 10 points out of the bottom of my hat, out of the hat.
Right. Well, we got a bit of an insight into the darker workings of Ian's mind, but no, I have a really competitive streak of very, very people sometimes are a little bit surprised by it. But I have a real competitive streak. But it is finding a way to channel it so that it actually helps you rather than become something destructive per se.
Yeah, I never found competition too destructive because it was always something, So I remember saying to somebody one time, I went into an archery. We were at some fun fair, medieval themed fair thing, and at archery, and I do archery, like I like archery. And I remember challenging somebody to a competition and then just beating the backside off him. And I was sitting there, I was thinking, well, and he was asking me afterwards, I said, well, I'd never go into a competition if I didn't know I was going to probably win it, at the end. So it's just probably finding the right competitor. Right. I think, it's not too bad, because if you do find somebody who is streets ahead of you and you want to compete with them, it's just going to feel bad, because they're just so much better than you, and they, you would exchange your life for their life or whatever. It just doesn't work. Like, you have to find somebody that's you can actually compete with, I think.
Well, as quickly, I'd just say the ultimate of that is competing with yourself, competing with your past version of yourself. I try to get across to a master trader to be a better trader tomorrow than you were yesterday. I know that's one of the things that's always driven me, just being a better trader tomorrow than I was yesterday. And that is just about the hard slog of incremental gains, just slowly but surely, just working away. But I take the point that having someone to rail against is no bad thing. All right. I mean, let's hope it just doesn't devolve into, you make death threats to Tom Hugard, like. That's
not really what I want to do with my life somehow.
To go.
That's not right. Too pretty for prison.
Not right. No, not right at all. So find a good way to channel it.
I would say what you were saying there with the internal competing with yourself is, I don't tend to compete with myself, but I tend to have at my best times, I have a really defined image of where I want to be or who I want to be or the type of person I want to be. And that's the happiest times in my life, because once you have this image of who you want to be, like this real clear image of who you want to be, whether it be as a trader, be as a person, be it physicality, be it anything, then you have a map and the journey, because everything you do then, that's good. So if you get a little bit better at trading, you start do less over trading or something like that, then you get this other little high. And frankly, the journey is worth much more, I find, than the actual end, because when you actually get the end thing, it's usually you're a bit like, okay. And then 15 minutes later, you want something else. But you can be on that journey for years and have the most wonderful time, because you are evolving as a human being into something better than what you are. And that's always been my sort of.
I'd agree 100% on that. I think I often say this for men. I can't speak for men, but for men, learning to trade markets might well be the best personal development course that most men ever do.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's that, and it brings me very swiftly onto my next thing, which was concepts. Because the learning of trading, a lot of people think that learning trading is this thing you go out and you learn a certain skill. They think you go out and learn a setup, and then you take that setup to the market, and you draw your trend lines and you do your Fibonacci, and then you make money. And it's not really about that. It's concepts. It's the understanding of concepts. And And I suppose you might remember from a time when you were all single, is that if you saw a girl who was pretty, you would have to say hello, or you'd have to try. You'd have to try because all of the risk in your life, all the risk in that situation was not doing something. And that's a concept, and that's a very different concept to of fear. Because if you're afraid of doing something, you I had a big epiphany one day where I realized that the real risk in trading, in my trading, was not taking trades. Because I knew I had enough skill to make profit. I knew enough stuff, but if I didn't take the trades, like I was in my account, like if I go into a trade and I don't take the trade and the trade then goes 20 points, I have lost 20 points. Now it's not come out of my capital, but it's come out of my income. If I get stopped out, I would have to get stopped out 7 times to on my normal stop. My normal stop's 2 or 3 points. I'd have to get stopped out at least 7 to 10 times to accumulate that same risk. So the risk was in inaction. Its risk was not doing something rather than doing something and it going wrong. So that's what I think is a huge big thing, and I think it's the same thing as a young fellow and he's sitting in a pub and he's looking at a pretty girl and he won't talk to her. He has all the risk is on his side there. It's just ridiculous. So I think that's a big thing. And I find as well is that every big leap in my trading journey has been nothing really to do with skill. I mean, the first year you're learning stuff and you have these conceptual ideas. Oh, trend line, it can be broken or it can be messed with or whatever. But then you start having these concepts. You start understanding these sort of milestone concepts about trading. Then you have an idea of what once you get to a certain point in trading, then you have an idea of what type of trader you want to be. And then that gives you a roadmap and off you go. And then you can spend the next 15 years of your life doing that. Really, it's a lifetime job.
Yeah. It is. But in terms of us today, sort of trying to help people, make a good start to 2025. As I said earlier, 4Ms: markets, method, money, myself. Questions I would want you to probably be thinking about, if you're not already thinking about, in terms of like markets. Do you know what markets, what time frames you'll be focusing on this year? Okay, is it differing? Is it changing? And if so, why? Is it because you're bored, or is it because you've got another way of operating or another idea? If you're a trading intraday, right? Well, what session are you going to focus on? Right? Everybody says, oh well, I can just trade all sessions all day. Trust me, you can't, not in a sustainable manner. So if you have a force with a gun against your head, which is the session you'd focus on? Once again, why? And actually, in terms of markets, I'd be saying give us some consideration to: are you adding in markets or are you subtracting markets? So what I mean by that is, maybe you just trade one market. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you've just spent your life trading 5-minute euro dollar chart, and maybe it's been dull and you're looking to add markets, right, to give you an opportunity because there is none in the particular product you're focusing on. And then on the flip side, maybe you're following 80 to 100 markets, but actually you're not getting anything done because you're so busy following 80 to 100 markets that you're overwhelmed. All right, in which case you're at the other end where you need to be subtracting markets and starting to focus down, and that's a kind of bracketing. All right, you're bracketing where you want to be in terms of markets. All right, so start to get a little bit clear on that. You don't necessarily have to be writing War and Peace. You just need to basically stay, even if just one page with a couple of bullet points, but just start to use it to get yourself focused in terms of markets. In terms of methods, well, what methods are you going to focus on? Right? Are you a trend trader? Are you a reversal trader? Are you a range bound trader? Do you like to trade all of them? All right. My suggestion is at the start of your journey, pick one, probably trending to begin with, and leading on from markets. Well, what time frame are you going to execute on? What time frame are you going to execute on? All right, and try to be consistent in that. As Ian said earlier, part of it is about knowing who you are. Everybody wants to think that they are the kind of Wall Street intraday scalper, all right? But the reality is most people aren't, and it is about understanding what time frame is feasible for you to sustain. And if that means, you're on weekly charts and you do an hour at the weekend and then 20 minutes on a Monday morning to put your positions on and leave them there for the week, if that's you, that's you. That's fine. It has to be sustainable. It has to be enjoyable. If you're trying to do too much, it'll just become a chore. What will happen is it'll become a chore, so you'll miss stuff, or you'll get sloppy, or you'll overtrade, etc. It just needs to be just find that kind of window that is sustainable for yourself, so that you're in a position to understand and get some data in terms of your data in terms of your hit rate and your risk to reward, and understanding later on your PE, etc., how that particularly works. So that's kind of markets and method. Would you add anything in there particular?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it end up being kind of the same. I think the first biggest thing that I had to do to improve my own trading back in the day was commit to it. Sort of take the stabilizers off and just go, right, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm either going to fail and crash and burn, or else I'm going to succeed at it. And there isn't, because then your back's to the wall. Once your back's to the wall, it's a lot easier to get stuff done when you have to get stuff done, because, and you take out the element of choice out of it. So I had to really commit, just do that.
Yeah.
I had to commit to one type of trading on one type of time frame, because the problem is that you end up doing style drift. So this isn't working today, so then you style drift your way over to the next place, and then you do that, and then you're like, oh, that's not working. I think I'll do swing trading today. Oh, my day trade it's not worked out, so I'll turn it into a swing trade, or whatever. Style drift. Waste of your lifetime. So just one trade, one type of trading, one type of time frame, at least at the beginning. Forgive yourself, because it's a game of failure, and you can't beat yourself past the post. You're only beating yourself, basically. Trade less, but trade your best stuff. Don't take risk, and that's a real problem with sim traders. They're great for taking risk and terrible. Focus on the process. The process is the only thing that really matters. The money is inconsequential. For many years, the money will be inconsequential, because you will not, even if you are consistent, you will not beat a guy in Burger King, basically, for a while. But the process, once the process is there, you can build on. If you've good process, you can always do better. And then the last thing I was going to say is, don't reinvent the wheel. And that kind of goes into the whole trend trading thing that you were just talking about there, because continuation patterns are generally continuation setups or patterns are generally easier in some ways, because you're not picking a bottom. There is no reason to try and do something new. You do not have to invent anything new. Totally. What you need to do is you need to understand concepts. So if you understand that you're in an uptrend, and you can mechanically work out that you're in an uptrend, then pullbacks, breakouts are going to have a higher probability of working. So a double bottom on a 60-minute chart in a screaming uptrend is a completely different setup to a double bottom in a downtrend. So it's the context that makes, because a lot of guys go out and it's a lot of problems with these people like Bukowski and all that sort of thing, that wrote those books, and they have this idea, and then maybe they're still relevant, I don't know. But just trading something like flags without looking at the context in which the flag appeared is, if there's something like that, somebody has built an algorithm around it and has mined the hell out of that edge. Then that edge doesn't exist anymore, I think. But those are the, I think the only other thing that popped into my head is probably 90% of your trading issues will boil down to one thing. A lot of people are chronic overtraders, for example. And then once you get behind that, what's the actual, because overtrading is a symptom of an emotion that you're having about trading, basically. So you're having FOMO, or you're having some version of fear, and 90% of, which is next week's one, basically, so I won't talk about it too much. 90% of all issues in trading are fear based.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of hard. Which is kind of hard because people get, like, it's bloody traumatizing, losing money, for especially when you're at the beginning. Oh God Almighty! When I started off, and we didn't have, we'd no MES,
Yeah.
and I started
That's right.
teaching myself that, and then you were going out and you were losing, you're losing effectively, what would have been a week's wages previously on two trades, and you really didn't know what you were doing, and that it was just traumatizing, and you're carrying that trauma with you for years afterwards. So there's always going to be that memory, and it's why most people can make money on sim accounts.
Yeah, everybody's a millionaire on sim. All right, so good stuff there. So then I'd be saying the other two M's, which you kind of linked into a little bit, money and myself. Money is about, have you got a simple money management routine? All right. Do you know what you're going to risk per trade, and why is that? Okay. Do you know what do you know your numbers? All right. Do you know what your all to risk is? Do you know what your hit rate is? Are you able to use that to understand whether you actually genuinely have a positive expectancy or not? Right now, I appreciate if you're right at the start of your journey, you might probably not have that data, right? But it's capturing that data should be one of your goals, all right, for 2025, getting tighter on your own data. And then, as you said, then it comes to managing yourself, and a part of that, I mean, that in itself, and actually we did, I think in season 1, we did whole sessions on markets, method, money, and myself. But myself, we could just talk about that for days and weeks anyway. But in terms of the context of us looking at making 2025 a good year, part of that is, do you actually have a way to monitor and understand your own state? Right? Do you actually have that self-awareness to know when you're having a good day, when you're having a bad day, and also being able to change that? If you're not having a great day, do you know what you need to do to change it? Or do you have the self-discipline, the self-trust when you're not having a good day to actually not even trade, to just basically say, do you know what, I'm not going to put myself out that, all right? So understanding that, if you don't, working on that is a really useful tool, along with understanding how you manage yourself. So Ian talked earlier about self-discipline. So the VTP that I teach is all about process, discipline, self-awareness. Those are the 3 key building blocks. Okay. Having a simple process, right? It's easier to be disciplined when you have a process to follow, right? When you're just basically hanging it on yourself to be self-disciplined in every session, just through willpower, that burns very, very quickly. You reach your decision fatigue levels exceptionally quickly. So having a simple process, a checklist that you can follow, it makes it easier for you to be disciplined in terms of what you need to do, because actually it becomes easier to be patient when you know what your signal is. It's basically a case of no signal, no trade. And then finally, self-awareness is about collecting that data and then reviewing that data to see, where you messed up. You're human. You're going to mess up. That happens to everybody, right? But you want to use your mistakes as a way to steer you rather than sink you. And even things like, some people don't like it, but how you reward yourself for good trading, and how you even punish yourself for bad trading. And when I say good trading and bad trading, I don't necessarily mean P&L, but that can have an impact. But actually, just how do you reward yourself when you've done a good week of disciplined trading in line with your plan, or do you actually look at punishing yourself when invariably you've not? You've been sloppy in your planning and your execution, etc. And also, because it's one of my things, is do you actually even have your first break penciled in, all right, for this year, all right? Especially if you're an intraday trader, it burns you, all right? Emotionally, mentally, it burns you. You think sitting at a desk won't, but it does. And as I say very often to clients, prevention is better than cure, all right? You want to be ahead of the game in terms of managing yourself, more so than waiting until you blow up because you're burnt out. How does that sound to you, Ian? Does that resonate with you?
One of the things checklists were, I think, one of the big things there. That I'm dyslexic, and dyslexic people are terribly organized people. We would tend to do 2 things at the same time. So if I'm cleaning a house, for instance, I'll dust and hoover at the same time, so I get nothing properly done. And so one of the things I had to do with trading was very much was checklists to make sure that I covered everything. Because it would be very easy for me to go into work, and even now, years later, it would be very easy for me to go into work and forget that there's news on today. And the only way that I can do that is checklist. Now, I don't have it on paper anymore because I've memorized it, and I can remember that I have to do this, 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 and this. I have to look at the daily chart. The first job I do is update charts, look at the daily chart, look at the naked daily chart, check the news, and then work your way down till you're actually looking at the setup. And then I have to have a concept of what is going to happen that day, what I think is going to happen that day. And trading is incredibly simple because price can only do three things. It can go up, down, or sideways. That's it. And you're making a decision. You're making a best guess, effectively, decision on up, down, or sideways. And then once it's up, down, or sideways, you have to have the technical skill to find support and resistance, and the technical skill to be able to enter a trade, and then the technical skill to manage the trade. That's it. That's the whole thing. So you can use, there's 100 different systems that you can use to do that. I choose to use Fibonacci. Some people choose to use trend lines. Some people choose to join two of them together. But that's essentially it. Up, down, sideways. Just bloody choose one. The worst thing that can happen is you get stopped.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I was talking to a guy, actually, I was talking to a guy yesterday. He's one of the best traders I know, I've ever known in my life. And he used to be a scalper, and he was a brilliant scalper. And then he trades now with these, like, he uses these big zones, and he just adds in the zone. So he has an idea, we say the price consolidates. So there's a consolidation thing going on in support, and then on a like daily or higher time frame, and then you have this big area that he's using, and he just builds his position inside and that sort of thing. So he has to take quite a lot of heat. But the thing is, which is that even an amateur trader is right on direction 62% of the time. So if you use a big enough stop loss on that sort of thing, it's 62. So you might use a 20, 30 point stop loss, but you're going to probably get 100 points on the other side, because a lot of his trades have seen them go 100 points. So where's the risk? The risk is that if he doesn't take those trades, if he uses a smaller stop loss, he's actually going to end up with more failures. So he's just using. So it's just an amazing thing, I think, with it. I don't know what point I was going to make actually with that, but no, it's just a conversation idea yesterday.
It's a joy to behold anyone who's trading well. To actually, you talked about earlier about picking on someone and competing with them, but also the flip side of that is I find it an absolute joy to work with traders who are good at their game. All right, who are good at them. I don't feel jealousy or envy about them. It's just I consider myself very fortunate to see great professionals operating at the best of their ability. I love it, fascinating. I think it's amazing. I take great pleasure. They may trade and operate in completely and utterly different ways than I would. It's absolutely fine. They've found what works for them, and they've basically scaled it and stuff. And I think it genuinely is a joy to behold and stuff. It's great to be around such people. So.
When you think about that, though, it's like if you're going to compete with somebody, they have to be close to your skill level. That because the thing is that if you were a Premier League footballer and you're going out and you're 52 and maybe haven't quite ran for a bus in a while, they're just going to kick you around the place. They're just going to beat you. They're going to score all the goals and all that kind of stuff. And you can't compete with them, not in that environment anyway. There's no competing with them. So. And also, an awful lot of those people, as people who generally are miles better than you, are actually really, most of the time, quite nice to you because they're not in competition with you. In fact, you're falling over them and you're saying, "Oh, this is brilliant! I can't imagine you could do this." Or the very Americanism, "I can't wait to be there with you" type thing. You used to see a lot of Americans say that if you were where to outskill them. So I don't think that they don't cause you any pain. It's the guy who's who's as good as you, but maybe 5% better, who's just on a streak. And then he goes, I got you. And then you're like, I'm going to get you the next one. And then you go in and you do do your actual trading. And then I think it's a great thing, competing, because you have to have the extra bandwidth. So if you're really struggling, it's like a sign of not really struggling, because if you're really struggling in something, you don't have time to compete. You're surviving. Yeah. But if you're competing, if you have the energy to compete with somebody in that environment, then you're flourishing. So I think that's a big thing with competition. And then I also think it exists in male groups anyway, and trading is a male group. It's 90 something percent male, because we're hierarchical, and men build groups in hierarchies, and that means there has to be a certain amount of competition. Actually, I could really see that when I was talking to because I spend a lot of time with 8-year-olds, because I have an 8-year-old son, mm-hmm. and it's all competition and it's all hierarchical. That's what they're doing, and how they bully each other and everything. It's really quite amusing to watch. And then you see that groups of girls are completely different, completely much more vicious, I think, in some ways. Because they're really exclusionary. They boys will compete, and then one goes, okay, you won, and then he'll try and change the game and compete in something else. But little girls just vicious vicious to each other, it's not to me.
Right. So, well, there you go. We cover all sorts here on our podcast, don't we? Probably, probably not a bad idea for us to start to draw it to an end. So, as I said, making 2025 your best year trading year ever. As I said, looking at it through markets, method, money, myself, through those prisms. That's what I've always talked about. Make sure you're covering all of those elements, taking those elements that both Ian and I have talked about. Even if it's just literally a one-page plan with bullet points, okay, this is how I'm starting my year, this is what I'm aiming towards. It will change, okay, but it can change off the back of data as you go deeper into the year. That's the way, okay. You can make amendments based upon your own data, based upon your own feedback. I think that is part of the joy of the game, but I appreciate other people may differ with that. So I think we've got a couple more sessions for this season of the TOGS Trading Podcast. Next week it'll be TOGS 37, and it's all going to be about fear. A trader's greatest enemy. Okay, we touched on it a little bit earlier, certainly Ian did. So that whole session will all be about fear, how we experience it, how we manage it. So that should be it'll be an interesting one. With both Ian and I've got plenty to offer in terms of that. So I hope you'll join us for that. And once again, as always, if you've enjoyed it, if you've liked it, you've helped it, please subscribe. Okay, we like the likes. We always engage with the comments or the emails that we get sent. Absolutely fantastic, and we've had some really great feedback. Really appreciate it. Until next week, I hope you all have a great trading week, everybody. Thanks very much, Ian, and trade well, everybody. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers.